Hi, everyone. We're going to give the audience a minute to log into Zoom before we get started, so we'll just wait 1 minute. All right, let's get started. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of you, wherever you're watching from. Thank you for joining us today for a webinar on understanding Myanmar's ethnic resistance organizations. I'm Pam Kennedy, a research analyst with Stimson's East Asia program, and I'm joined by Ami Acary, an SJD candidate at the Indiana University Maurer School of Law, and Amara Thiha, a non-resident fellow at Stimson and a doctoral researcher at the Peace Research Institute of Oslo. And today we're going to discuss Myanmar's EROs in the context of Operation 1027 and the recent March 7th Kachin Independence Army offensive. As the civil war continues and the situation on the ground evolves, the junta versus the various resistance or anti-junta groups situation evolves, it's important to consider how the ethnic resistance organizations are also evolving, what roles they play in the resistance, how do they think about their own goals and interests in the larger picture of the Civil War, and what are the ERO's long-term interests in the future of Myanmar? As a quick housekeeping note, please send in any questions at any time through the Zoom Q&A function you will see at the bottom of your screen, and we will take audience questions in the latter half of the hour. So I will first ask Acary to share her thoughts, and she has been studying EAOs and EROs for many years. Acary, since the February 2021 coup, how do you think the role and the perception of the EROs has been changing in the resistance and among the ordinary people of Myanmar?
Thank you, Pam. Yes, regarding with the perspective of Myanmar people on the ethnic resistance group, I want to highlight one thing. Since the beginning of the 2021 military coup, there's a lot of discussion and then different perspective how people should address this group, how we should address these revolutionary groups. So especially after 2021 military coup, people gradually get better understanding on a decade-long brutal civil war. At the same time, the absence of ethnic conflicts in Myanmar. In short, I would like to say that as of today, most of the people in Myanmar, they prefer to use ethnic resistance organization instead of ethnic armed organization, because in technically and in terminology, in Burmese language, it seems like resistant means that reflects the goals and the standard of the revolutions. So we can see that in every news or some other activities, you might be able to see that a wider usage of that terminology. So I can say that this is one key things that majority people in Burma, how they accept this revolution. At the same time, how we are on the same page in this period of time. Yeah. And I would like to add that these EROs are the cornerstone of this revolution. So they are very crucial for the better future of Myanmar.
Thank you, Acary. As a follow-up, the objective of defeating the junta is, of course, a common goal of the resistance or groups and the EROs that see themselves perhaps as outside the resistance to some extent. But the in terms of the success on the battlefield and in the momentum of the fight against the junta, these powerful offensives like Operation 1027 and the KIA attacks are really key. So how do you see the relationship between the EROs and the resistance changing over the past few years?
Oh, yes. This is very important because we can see the momentum is gradually high. At the same time, how their people support and how EROs capture the territorial gain. So this is very important. And I would like to say this from this political change, the momentum of the resistance switched into wide understanding and acceptance by the people. So since Operation 1027, so today is 154 days since the beginning of that Operation 1027. So we can see several changes at the same time, how these offensive nature can flip the political atmosphere. So everyone has those kind of understanding. At the same time, these March 7 KIA their offensive against the military is a crucial thing as well, because when we look back the previous time, northern Myanmar, Eastern Myanmar, and Western Myanmar, we can see several incidents, especially in ethnic control area, and that shows that how these operations are very important and crucial for the political change in Myanmar. So to go back to March 7 KIA offensive things. So I would like to say that we can see how military is defeated. At the same time, how people respond to these operation. So I do not have a specific data, but as far as I can observe, people are people get a better positive feedback or positive how should I say, positive a constructive approach. So they have more satisfying, we can find a better solution through this thing. At the same time, this operation, it's really helpful not only for the northern part of Myanmar, but also every other part of Myanmar, because each EROs has their own goals and they have their significance, so they can do a better collaboration in some case. So this is very I will say a progressive things for the resistant group as well.
Thank you, Acary. Amara, you've studied security sector reform in Myanmar since well before the coup. My question for you is, how would you interpret the interests of the EROs, especially those that in the past have sought more autonomy? from the center of the state in the context of building a lasting peace in Myanmar?
Yes. So, in broadly speaking, the EROs want to achieve a greater autonomy. And when the state become weaker in the recent months, the central authority is now weakened at some extent, at least within the past 60 years. So this created an opportunity for EROs to, strengthen the influence area and consolidate the territorial control. But the question is, to what extent they will expand it, and what is the political process, and how they want to achieve. As Ami Acary said, so different EROs have a different strategic position and strategic way of thinking to consolidate their influence area. So right now, I observe there are at least 6 different pathways of the political process. The first one is more on the NUC, NUG, and NUG form of interim federal charter path. And then we saw the ethnic council, executive committees, way IEC, we usually say. And they also saw that there was some non-state, non-armed political actors, like an ethnic political party have their own constitutional process. Different local consultative committees now have their own way of drafting the constitution. And then we have an ongoing process, like, NCA signatories of a state constitution process, and FPNCC, where the United was the lead, and this is where we mentioned about the confederation. So we got 7 different or 6 different pathway. But the interesting part is there are some cross-coordination for some structure, but sometimes they are not. And sometimes they contradict each other. But interestingly, some actors have relying on the EAOs, and they have involved in different structures. So even that is contradict, the agency are the same sometimes. That is also the interesting part. This is how the EROs may be hedging the strategy to maintain and trying to get away. But right now, all of these 6 pathways do not have the de-escalation or how to go on the peace process. Everyone is looking for autonomy and then looking for the political process that can form the new state of Myanmar. So we saw 2 different political, de-escalation or ceasefire-related documents that is coming up. The one is the NUG, and some EROs signed and proposed the statement a few months ago, and that's have some guidelines and precondition. Another one is the FPNCC proposal that was submitted in 2017 that is still valid. But this is a 2 political process that we saw if they want to make a deal with the central authority. So this is the situation right now, and I think there are more divergence towards the autonomy, but still not enough or not sufficient thinking or getting together back how to see in the process in the future.
Thank you. That makes sense. In the future, do you expect there to be a similar process of talks with the armed groups like before the coup, or does collaboration with the resistance change that dynamic in any significant way?
So when we talk about the talks, there are 2 different things. The first one is to talk with the central authority, with the non-state actors or ERO. That is the one part. That is how are we going to negotiate for the political guarantee and consolidating the control. That is the one part. Another part is the talks within the EROs. Is another way. That is something that we need to consider. But most importantly, what we have to be thinking right now is what constitute ERO and how are we going to identify them, and whether they can be considered as a new ERO, or is it just another kind of ethnic defense forces. This is something that we are not very clear. This is, for example, BPLA, the newly formed very active Burmese People's Liberation Army, whether we consider as a Burman ERO or not, or whether KNDF is an ERO or not. This is one part. But if you're looking on the process right now, that Three Brotherhood is now in the negotiating process, the ceasefire negotiation, and sooner or later they will bring the political agenda. Of course, every fight is for the political autonomy and agenda, and at some point there will be the political negotiation. And we have seen the documents and proposal that they will all comply with the FPNCC proposal, led by the UWSA and they reaffirmed last few months ago. So I think there will be the one process. If there is a political negotiating the central authority with the Chinese mediation, FBNCC process will be the first process. We're going to see it. At the same time, for the other, what about other EROs, whether they will be on board with the FBNCC or whether they will create their own process? I think in that case, they will require some form of ERO summit or EROs, representative coming together and looking on how are they going to de-escalate. I think that is something that we need to start thinking for right now, that, if we want to end the conflict in the political settlement, this is the right time to start coordinating within EROs, how they want to see it and how they're going to proceed with de-escalation.
Thank you, Amara. So we're starting to get some questions. Again, please feel free to add them to the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We have an interesting question initially from Marga McElroy, who notes that each ERO, has always had its own goals. It's not a new phenomenon, and that there have also been many alliances between EROs, and they always turn out to be temporary. And I think one thing we're watching now is the Three Brotherhood Alliance, which had such a great impact with Operation 1027. Like, how durable is that? And Marga asks, how is this different? How will it lead to a unifying plan for the future of Myanmar? Like, where is the leadership in these ERO alliances? And Acary, I wanted to throw this question to you first. What are your thoughts on the alliances between the EROs and how those might eventually play a role in some sort of post-junta plan for the country?
Thank you, Pam. This is a good question. Before I go to the question, I would like to highlight the previous experience. There was remarkable peace negotiation and political dialogue in the previous time, but because of the lack of inclusiveness and experiencing trust issue among key stakeholders, that produced this contemporary crisis in Myanmar. So that's the person who is asking this question is a really good question and right question. So we are also looking for where is the leadership, right? So it is very difficult to describe where the leadership should be. But I would like to highlight that every EROs, they have, as we already know, that they have their own goals and they have their own vision for their place or their people. So the thing that I can surely say is that they might have some sort of policy, like kind of how they should cooperate, how they are going to implement with a combined leadership or collective leadership. Because as Myanmar is a very diverse country, so it is very difficult to get a sole leadership. It might be difficult, but we need to figure it out. What is the best way that we can work together? So basically, the ERO might have some sort of policy, which is they're gonna do the same. They're gonna do things together for the same goal or common goal. At the same time, they might have their own track or how they gonna implement their which is not same interest or same goal with other EROs. So there could be one or two approach, but for now it is really difficult to describe explicit solution or explicit answer for this question. But hopefully in the future we might, Myanmar people, we can develop what kind of leadership do we really want, what kind of leadership we are going to follow. So I believe it will gradually develop and emerge in a specific way. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think it does. And that sparked a follow-up question in my mind. You mentioned how, the EROs may have these policies on how they are going to pursue their own goals, how they might pursue shared goals within the context of an alliance that they are currently involved in. But often, of course, the EROs will have a political wing, like the KIA has the KIO. Do you have any insights into what role that relationship between the armed and the political wings plays in terms of that leadership, especially during the Civil War, when the armed component may have like the most clout at the moment, being very active against the junta? Do you see that relationship between the political and the armed wing as a key factor in ultimately figuring out leadership?
Yes, thank you, Pam. From my point of view, it is very important how people understand these political leadership role and armed wings. As you mentioned earlier, yes, that is true. Most of the ethnic resistant group, they have their political leadership, which mostly we call, for Kachin, they have Kachin Independence Organization. For the Karen, they have Karen National Union. For Chin, they have Chin National Front. So those kind of thing. At the same time, they established that military wings. Mostly they use army, Kachin Independence Army, Karen National Liberation Army, and then Chin National Army, those sort of things. So it is very important. But however, as far as I understand, they are under the civilian political wings. So that's mean their leadership is very their leadership and the role of army is very important in the part of military things. But the main policy maker and the person who hold the decision maker is the political wings. So it is very very crucial. So in short, we can say that those political decision and mandate will come from that political wings.
Thank you. Amara, what are your thoughts on the leadership issue?
I think this is always been there historically. If we looking on the historical, what's happening in conflict in Myanmar, that the northern bloc and southern blocs are always there. So, if we're looking, it's the same pattern, right? I mean, if we're looking on now, is the northern bloc that we can say the FP and CC led one process, and all the southern blocs are now looking on more supporting NUCC and NUG process. So that is always the same. And another thing is, that is not about one person representing everything. It is more about the collective leadership and looking on through the collective leadership. I think that takes some time, but it's always slowly progressively realized. If you're looking on in 2012, 13 situation, the only thing required is looking on how we're going to setting the agenda, right? Whether we're going to looking on the autonomy and then to the peace process and then forming the union. That is the one process. And previously it's the other way around. We're looking for the peace process as a way to overcome the state building, and now it's the other way around. So I think this is something that we need to start discuss within EROs and also within ERO itself, what they really want to achieve openly, and then what they really want to de-escalate and try to mitigate the conflict spreading too much into problems. And the most important part is how are they going to de-escalate slowly in the future. That is something that we need to looking on. And I think this is all the neighboring countries are also looking on the same thing, that that because the neighboring countries have to absorb or something happen around the border, especially on Thailand and China. This is something they also want to see on is how what's the de-escalation strategy in the upcoming future, right? So I think at the end of the day, the problem is a political problem. So we also need to change the political process. So I think we shouldn't forget about that. It's a political problem and have to think it on. And, armed conflict have to be stopped at some point. It will not going to be, not healthy for the long run. Yeah.
I agree. The de-escalation question is key. How to off-ramp from the civil war when the junta is defeated at some point, we hope. We have an interesting question that I think dovetails from Mogyo, who asks, how can there be a symmetrical federal union, given that the country is very heterogeneous, as we've been discussing? Certain EAOs, like United Wa State Army and NDAA, have de facto asymmetrical relationships with the center, and they have for decades at this point. And Mogyo also says the ULA and the AA have said that they want a confederation at minimum. So is a symmetrical federal union a dangerous delusion, which seems to drive governance dialogues? What are your thoughts on how to square the circle of all these different groups who have very different perspectives on what the future of Myanmar looks like and what they have been fighting for, not just during the Civil War, but for decades previously? I'll start with Amara, then go to Acary.
That is true. I mean, Myanmar is always in the asymmetrical process, and even during the colonial period and the post-colonial time. And there was a sudden period during the socialist regime we tried in the symmetrical way. That is not that really federal at all. It's a socialist states. So, and that is because Southeast Asian countries are historically formed as a mandala circle. So, that's how the center is influenced the peripheral, and that is inherited everything, and it's also overlapped each other. So it is not just, the area that is getting some more right and some are not, and some are just, provided by the central authority that you can do more or less. So I think it's always a matter of asymmetry is always there. And to what extent that, federal states can going on is not about to what extent you can control the areas. It's all about the authority of that particular area can provide the services to their own population. And that's in reality is costly. It's a federal states are pretty expensive and costly. But so how, if there is a asymmetrical state, how they can form it and how they can, provide a service, it's something we need to start considering. And then this is also a matter of looking on that, when we talk about the federalism, it's not about just not about the ethnics and who provide who control the area, but rather whether that local governance can sufficiently provide the services to the population in that particular area, and how they're going to sustain for the longer term, and how they're going to trade with the neighboring countries, and how they got to engage with the different stakeholders. That I think these are the aspect that we start looking on to explore right now before going too far.
Thank you, Amara. That's a really good point. It is more about ultimately the governance than who is like the ruler of a specific state, especially in the peripheral states, the border states. Acary, what are your thoughts on symmetrical versus asymmetrical federal union?
All right, thank you, Pam. Yes, at some point I concur, Amara. So that it is very important how when we think about federalism, it is how we gonna shape our governments. So what kind of governance system do we really want? For now, I would like to say that the current situation, it's on the other hand, is a very good good political change, because in some area there are bottom-up approach. So that gradually develop how people try to do their local governance, and then how they are doing local administration. So that's really a good things that blooming during these difficult times. So we shall grab this kind of change to a better direction. So when we think about asymmetric or other kind of federalism, it is very important the division of competency. So how those kind of competency we should divide it. So even though we do really want federalism, we need to consider we need to have a strong or a concrete division of competency between local government and state or union. So that is crucial things. If we cannot establish those a good or a strong division of competency, we might still struggle with these kind of political struggle or obstacles. So I would like to say that it totally depends on the people of Myanmar how we want to see our country in the future, in 10 years, in 20 years. So depends on the people in that specific area. They can develop whatever they want to design. Yeah.
Thank you. As a follow-up also from Mogyo, who asks, is a solution for sustainable peace in Myanmar to allow independence by certain groups that have previously advocated for their independence in the past, like Rakhine, Karen, Mon, and make Myanmar more build Myanmar's future more on the model of Yugoslavia, for example, where ethnic groups were previously dominated by a plurality ethnic group. I will toss this to Amara first.
Yes. So the Balkan notation, I mean, this is one of the, how can I say, the phobia for not only Myanmar, but almost all the Southeast Asian countries that are considered, that the Balkanization process was one part. But of course, but different part is, the way that the ethnic identity is, created and the modernism is created is a little bit different from the Western part. But what we have to looking on is, the chance, the chance of becoming a balkanization is low, but it doesn't mean that there will be sub-states and local governments that emerge. The country is not in the state of a rump state, so the local governments become the primary service provider for the local populace in at least for next couple of decades from now on. Even if we saw the de-escalation today, there will be the local governors who will provide the services to the people to rebuilding and resilience for the next couple of years, at least to 5 to 10 years. So this is something that we have to looking at on the role of the local government is more important than ever. But then there's a problem in here that, where the legitimacy is coming from, whether the local governance who provide the service for the legitimacies, or whether the persons, the EROs, the political objective for the arms is having a legitimacy and mandate, or whether the political actors who are representing out there are the legitimate actor. That is something, looking at on. But at the end of the day, that should be decided by the people and local government, whether they want to be escalated or de-escalated, right? Because the wars are expensive and it takes time. It takes time to, to pressing up how the local communities can suffer and how they can, going on. But most importantly for me, I mean, this is a very personal opinion, is at the end of the day, it is very difficult in Myanmar to simply map out everyone, like who is living in where, right? So Myanmar will, even if Myanmar become Balkanization, it will never become like a Croatia or Albania. It will be more like Kosovo, where there will be different spots in the different situation in the middle of Balkan. That will be the situation more similar than Croatia and Serbia. Thank you.
Those are excellent points, Amara. And we have a comment actually from Chi Kong that leadership must be decided democratically, period. And yeah, you make a great point that no matter what the outcome is that it does depend on the popular will. And the challenges is that with different ethnic groups predominant in certain areas, like gaining the consensus means gaining consensus not only on like a national level, but also these multiple subnational levels. So there are, I guess there's a multiplicity of areas in which the citizens have to weigh in on who is going to provide what kind of services and what form of governance they want, down to the level of their townships or their villages. That is really interesting. Acary, do you have any thoughts to add to that?
I don't have to add on that. Yeah.
All right, so we have a question looking at the EROs from the outside from GF Taylor. What roles are Myanmar's neighbors playing in the ERO landscape? So India, China, Bangladesh, Thailand, etc. And especially for the EROs who operate along the borders where the junta does not have control, they are in some cases effectively like the local power that is conducting foreign policy in some of these cases. So what sort of roles do they play, do the neighbors play in regards to the ERO's activities? I will throw this to Acary first.
Thank you, Pam. Yeah. Yes, this is very important thing as well, because when the country is in conflicts or in civil war, it's also impact neighboring country. So we can see well at this time as including other neighboring country, they have specific role to play in this situation. So I want to highlight more Thailand and India. So recently we can see that there are some humanitarian assistance and other collaboration with international stakeholders and international community to help and to support internally displaced people from Myanmar. So this is very important. So at the same time, their foreign policy and how they want to engage with these kind of things is also a crucial thing. Because if they don't let us enter our internally displaced people, so that will be more problematic than we face right now. So, but unfortunately, they accept and they open their border for our people, and at the same time, they provide the place, they provide space, they provide some humanitarian assistance, and then they provide some limited education, access to education or access to health care. So it is very relief for some IDPs people. So we need to strengthen this kind of thing, because that is the fundamental thing that they can play well in this role. So at the same time, when we look back to the India part, so it's pretty different with the way Thailand engage in Burma issue. So they are, I would like to say they are pretty close, and they don't, they are hesitate to help, or they involved as much as they should. That is what my observation regarding with India. So they should do more open, and then they should help more people who suffer and who flee from this internal conflict, because we don't have lands, we don't have a safe land in our country and in our territory. So our neighboring country play very important role at this point. I want to left for the China and Bangladesh for Amara, and that's what I want to discuss. Yeah.
Amara, go ahead.
Let, let, so let's start with China. I mean, so one of the interesting facts about China in recent months, especially after the last year party congress, is this is the first time that China mediate. I mean, previously they involved, but they are involved as a facilitator role, facilitating the peace talks and broking the peace talk. Now this is the first time they mediated, and then through the shuttle diplomacy. So even before the 1027, we saw the shuttle diplomacy, proactive diplomacy, and there will be upcoming a lot of trips in the upcoming weeks about shuttle diplomacy. You're going to see it, and of course, all of these countries are big and they have an influence the EAOs, and EAOs also have some form of communication and reliance. But this doesn't mean that these EAOs around the borders are not the always comply with what the China's or India or Thailand's want them to do, right? So that is an interesting part. And now China want to have a stability around the border, but the way of they understand the stability and the way they understand the mediation and political process, it will be a little bit different from what you have seen is a Western style of frame of political process. So the dialogue in the northern Shan State is still stalled, and that is because of the structural constraint that both parties do not want to talk within the 2008 constitutional framework, right? So they need to look beyond, and this is where what kind of proposal will be coming in, and whether the China is willing to mediate these kind of political talks beyond 2008. If that kind of political processes start going on, that will be the first time China mediating for the political process in Myanmar. That's one of the interesting part that we have to looking it on. That's the Chinese part. And for the Thailand, of course, Thailand is very sophisticated. Then they knew exactly how to engage with the central and the periphery for more than 6 or 7 decades. And now they are starting, providing the humanitarian assets, and they are trying to create a platform that, parties can start coming in. And now they're trying to, convergence to track the Chinese track and Thailand track, and they try to putting on to another track as possible mediation. So these are the attempts. So hopefully there will be some form of track to negotiation in the upcoming months. That is something we expected, and if so, at least that is good for the population, conflict affected population around the border. And we have also seen that the Indian ambassador to Myanmar just recently new ambassador appointed. So here's an experienced person in the region. So this is somehow the India is giving attention as a Myanmar as a strategic positioning, how they gonna put Myanmar in their Indo-Pacific strategy. That is something we've seen it. And for the Bangladesh, one of the interesting part is we've seen the Bangladesh-Myanmar border will be another conflict hotspot that we've seen, and we observe the arms and trainings and provided to the Muslim communities and Rangers communities in Rakhine. At the same time, there's an ongoing, conflict around the border. So I'm pretty worried that there can be another round of, the ethnic tension can happen around the Bangladesh border. And then I believe Bangladesh government really don't want to happen. So, yeah.
Thank you, Amara. Acary, you have another point to add.
Yes, I want to add one more point regarding with the role of neighboring country. So it is very important how these countries see EROs, because in the previous time they don't really give that much attention. So they don't really have a good communication or collaboration with some EROs. But right now the momentum has changed. At the same time, they see what's happened, and they realize who is controlling their territory. So it is very important, and I would like to encourage those countries as well. They should do more engagement with respective EROs so that people can get a better collaboration. At the same time, IDPs, they get more helps and humanitarian assistance. Yeah.
Thank you. You both raised really good points, especially on that last point about the need for the neighbors of Myanmar to engage more with the EROs. We had a question that we've kind of answered from Thomas Lucan about the role of these outside countries in the immediate situation, but also in the political future of Myanmar. It's clear that the EROs are going to play a significant role no matter which pathway is taken after the Civil War. So engaging with them on the political level will be really important as well. We have 15 minutes and many questions from the audience, so I will try to get through as many as possible. We have from Billy Ford at USIP a question for Amara about the question of dialogue. Do you feel that the public would ever accept an outcome in which the Myanmar military retains political or military power? And if not, how do you approach dialogue in that context?
I mean, here is, what kind of dialogue what we are meaning in here, right? The dialogue for the de-escalation, or dialogue for the upcoming state of Myanmar, or dialogue, within the country for, just for certain form of, federalism. We don't know. I mean, but, one thing is, if we start having a dialogue for federalisms, or trying to dialogue for the local governments, of course, military is one of the problem. So we need to be considered the part of the problem, and then this is how they need to be part of the on the group or discussion. That is one part. And so depending on the dialogue, depending on what you want to achieve, that is something that whether they will be part of it or they will not be part of it. And depending on that, we can have what we wanted, right? I mean, of course, having a civilian oversight and civilian, supervision and oversight of the, military is the goal. And how we got to get there is that there will be a lot of track. And that is not only, when we talk about the civilian oversight of military, it is not only for the state competence, it also includes the non-state competence too, right? How the NUCC, NUG, and other EROs going to strengthen the civilian oversight is something we also need to discuss on that matter too. I think this is where the ERO summits are quite critical, that whether these EROs and non-state competence are willing to, go on the what kind of civilian leadership. That is also we need to looking forward. So this is when we talking about military and civilian, we have to looking beyond the SEC, but also looking on the those competence, non-competence, political actors in the policy. That is what I think. So, yeah.
Acary, do you have thoughts to add to that on the role of dialogue if the Myanmar military retains political or military power after the junta is defeated?
I don't really have to add. It's good to go. Yeah.
We have an interesting question from Derek Van Pelt, so might as well get into the speculative territory. What are the chances that ultimately the junta might prevail? Or if not, what kind of time frame do you expect to see the defeat of the junta and the resolution of the civil war? Amara?
Let's put it that way. I mean, so when we talk about the end of the junta, is the end of course, end of the Doctoral is ideologically or is the structurally, right? So at certain point, even the country is so weak to become the rump state, at a certain portion of the armed combatants will still keep holding the ideology, right? So I'm looking when we talk about when will be the junta will downfall is a matter of there will be the new identity that has to be replaced, and that has to, what kind of identity or ideology can be replaced. So, and also if you're looking on the physical part, whether the strength and everything, we also need to looking on to what extent the recent conscription law is to what extent it's going to be effective, and how the PDF in central areas can still able to resist, and how they're going to continue the war, because waging war is expensive. The cost of magazine in central Myanmar costs more than a 2 bag of rice, right? I mean, it's a pretty expensive to wage a war. So if we want to get away from the junta, we also need to start looking on and idealizing that what kind of security forces that junta want to reform, what kind of thing that they want to see in the future. That is quite important too. That is whether they also have some ideological crisis too right now. At the same time, we also need to looking beyond that, how are we going to foresee the kind of security arrangement in Myanmar in that kind of whether it's symmetric or asymmetric situation, right? When the central authority is so weak, and then there will be the rank state, and then they will be competing for the power for sure at a certain point. And at the time, whether the democratic leadership and civilian oversight can replace and control is a critical juncture. So that is falling the junta or weakening the junta is not the critical juncture, but trying to fill up the power vacuum with the civilian leadership is the most critical juncture for Myanmar, I thought.
Yes, that is a really good point. That yeah, the main question is going to be when the Myanmar military, when the Sitat is defeated, what takes its place? Acary, what are your thoughts on this? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yet, it's all we think about. What if one military junta is defeated? What will be the next, right? It is important, and then we should to start think about what we gonna to do after the junta is defeated. So I would like to say this is difficult to describe in one sentence or one thing, but I can clearly say that as of today, most area in Myanmar are controlled by the specific resistant group. So that can be a turning point for Myanmar. At the same time, we will be able to see if we do more things, and then we collaborate more, and then we stand strong together. In the near future, we gonna get what we want. So I would like, yeah, that's my additional comments on this question. Yeah.
Thank you. And to round out the discussion, I think we'll turn to a sort of economic angle. We have a question from Hije Pak about how do the Myanmar people, as well as the EROs, view the U.S. sanctions that have been placed on the junta since 2021, especially the sanctions on specific members of the military, cronies, state-owned enterprises. How does that impact the way that the EROs are operating, or that they view this policy measure by the U.S.? Acary?
All right, thank you, Pam. Yes, regarding with this sanction, so from my point of view, it is very effective, because it at some point it's disrupt their function. At the same time, it's blocks some kind of specific kind of activities, so it's really good. But we need to be more careful that when this kind of sanction is put on the specific crony or enterprises or specific people. So we should always consider that that sanction might not really hurt to the Myanmar citizen or Myanmar people. This is very crucial as well. So I will say 50-50 for now. So it's as putting sanction to the military backup enterprises or specific person is really good, because that shows or that reflects how international community or foreign country stand together with Myanmar people. So that's a really, I will say, is a good initiative. So I really appreciate for putting those kind of sanctions. But at the same time, we need to sanction only is not enough. So we need to do more things. How we should change the how we should overcome this crisis and this decade-long civil war or internal conflict. So this is more important. So sanction is good, but we need to do more for the system change and the structural change as well.
And as a quick follow-up, where would you like to see, like if you were driving the policy of all of Myanmar's neighbors, as well as the Western powers watching what is unfolding, where would you like to see more engagement from these outside countries?
Yes, thank you, Pam. Thanks for this follow-up question. I want to see more helping education sector and then healthcare sector, because I feel like these two sectors are very important, because I will say Myanmar suffer double C or double C crisis. The first is COVID, global pandemic, and then we cannot make up ourselves, and then the next C who is happen. So these Myanmar really suffer double C crisis. So we should it is very important how international community or foreign country, how they can play if they really want to, if they are committed to support and help this to increase democratic values or to achieve a peaceful country. So they can do a lot of things. So as I mentioned, education sector, health sector. So this is human to human. So it's not a big deal. They can do very well, I believe. At the same time, if they should involve more negotiation things, so they should do more engagement with key stakeholders who is actually important in this political change. So that could create a better understanding, and then that could reflect how international communities or foreign countries can contribute more. Because if they don't really get insightful comments or and filter information, they might not be able to establish effective policy or assistance to Myanmar.
Thank you. And Amara, you get the last word. Your thoughts on the effectiveness of sanctions and what you would like to see Myanmar's neighbors, Western powers like the United States doing more to assist the resistance and the EROs in their efforts?
I mean, what I feel it is a two-part, right? The first part is, trying to provide support to the conflict-affected, communities. That is the most important part. I always feel that, because they need it. That is one part. They need to focus more on the humanitarian dialogue, humanitarian support, and for having a resilience to start their life again. And that is the one part. And the second part I want to focus is more on the idealizing and trying to provide a support and platform to mediate it within the EROs and anti-SEC and democratic forces, so they can have a more clear vision and more clear ideas and what they want to do and how they're gonna, if they want to end up the negotiated settlement, what's the point that they wanted and how they're gonna achieve. This is something that I really concern. That is something we need to focus more on. And another part is, I do not consider China as the threats. I mean, China have a very big leverage both on the regime and also have an influence in the certain level of influence in the northern Myanmar. So I think they can be the really big part, the partner, if we can convince them to be part of it. and they really have to have a stable neighborhood. This is something that we need to looking on. And one thing what we are missing right now is we never saw and hear what China really understand on Myanmar, right? I mean, we need some voice and some thought from the Chinese on Myanmar. That is something that we also need to consider how they want to see it, what's their view, this kind of thing. I think these are something we need to start rolling out the dialogue. I think that will be something we need some system in the future. Yeah, medium-term future.
Thank you, Amara, and thank you, Acary. We are right at the top of the hour, so to be respectful of everyone's time, we will have to cut off the lengthy conversation here. Thank you both so much for this really in-depth, detailed, important discussion. And thank you so much to our audience for submitting so many questions and comments, which are all really insightful. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. There are 36 additional questions sitting in the queue right now. So thank you for your attention to this timely topic. Please keep following the work of Amara and Acary as they continue to study Myanmar, and keep your eyes out for more analysis and webinars on Myanmar from Stimson in the coming weeks and months. Thank you again, and this will conclude the webinar.